Hi everyone, my name is Clayton. My partner's name is Eric, and we've recently become new gay dads through an adoption process. We've adopted a beautiful baby girl. Her name is Elaine, and I've recently decided to create a vlog with some videos talking about what we're learning as new parents, what we're discovering as a new family unit, any of those tips and tricks that we're discovering along the way. I thought it would be nice to put these videos out there for people in a similar situation as us to learn from. I know that when we started talking about building a family and it started getting pretty serious, and I'll walk you through what our process was, but one of the things that I did was just start searching the internet. Things like what to prepare for having a newborn in your home, essential products that you need for a baby. There was a lot of hospital orientation videos for new mothers that were out there. So I used videos. I've read a few books, and one of the great ways of finding a great resource outside of the internet is to go to your local library and check out some parenting books. And so because of that experience and what I've learned, I thought it might be helpful for me to put out some similar videos and hope that anybody can take what they want from it and learn from it. One of the first videos that I wanted to start with was our adoption process. How did we get here? So Eric and I have been together for 9 years, and we met through dating sites, Match.com and Chemistry.com. One of their free communication weekends, we connected. And one of the things that I made sure of on our first date, because I've been in other previous relationships, and you don't want to scare people away by talking about like how many kids you want like on your first date. But as I was getting a little bit older and thinking about what I wanted to do and what my long-term goals were, one of them was to have a family. So I made sure that on Eric and I's first date over pizza, I mentioned that I wanted to make sure that my next relationship involved somebody who wanted a family. And that meant having children, or at least a child. And Eric luckily wasn't scared away, and he said that he also had been thinking about becoming a larger family unit than two, and kind of figuring out what that process would be. First thing we wanted to make sure was, of course, that we were in a loving, long-term relationship, that we were financially stable, and we're mentally prepared for that. As much as you can be. I mean, I remember my mom, when she found out that she was going to have a granddaughter, she said, well, are you ready to be parents? And I'm like, is anybody ever really ready? And it's so overwhelming. So we'll just start at the beginning. About 2 years ago, Eric and I started really talking about, okay, I think it's time for us to have a family. I mean, I'm getting older. I'm not getting any younger. I don't want to be 70 years old when my child is graduating high school. If we want to do this, we need to figure it out. And we started looking into fostering, because one of the things Eric and I both agreed on is that there's too many kids in this world who need a good home. And we didn't want to just create a baby for ourselves, whether that was our own genetic makeup or something of that nature, to get a new child into the world. We wanted to give a child who needed a home. And we thought fostering would be the best way to do that. And, like I said, it's very overwhelming. I mean, I was doing Google searches and looking at, okay, what is it like to foster? And I reached out to a resource and sent emails and got some communications back, but I didn't feel very good about the process at first. And I didn't know if I was doing the right thing, if I was talking to the right people. So we just kind of like put it on the back burner. And, then a year goes by, and, I'm thinking, okay, there are friends that we know that have children who are gay men, and I needed to reach out to one of them to find out what their story was. Because I really felt like, again, we talked about this a year ago. We wanted to get this done. We put it back on the back burner, and I was just, okay, we're either doing this or not. We're shitting or getting off the pot. And I excuse my language, but I'm a real person. I'm a real parent. So I'm going to say whatever comes to mind. I mean, I'm wearing sweats and a t-shirt today because that's my life right now. I'm pretty much the stay-at-home parent. But anyway, I digress. So I reached out to one of our friends that I knew had adopted, and I kind of wanted to know what his story was and what his process was. And through that communication, he said, you need to get connected to Foster Adopt Connect. They're a resource that services the greater Kansas City area, so parts of Kansas, mostly in Missouri. But seeing that we live in the Kansas City metro area, we went ahead and reached out to them as a resource. What I will tell you about Foster Adopt Connect is that they're an advocacy group. They're not an adoption agency. They work with people who are in the adoption, foster, mostly foster care services. They connect those parents that are utilizing or providing foster homes. They connect them with resources with food, clothing, medical care, mental health services. I'm trying to think of what else. I mean, they do so much. They do a lot of social activities for the kids and for the foster parents and the parents of those children. They really want to make sure that the people that are being foster parents have a place to go to kind of navigate that process. But knowing that they've handled people who've done adoption and knowing that they work in the foster community, my friend thought that would be a great resource for us to start with and just kind of discover what it is that we wanted for acquiring a child and what that process would possibly look like for us. And that was a good place for us to get some answers. So we met with an individual there, and she kind of just listened to our story, and we talked about how we didn't want to make a new baby. We wanted to give a child a home. At the time, we were thinking we probably weren't going to get an infant. We were probably going to have to get a child that's 2 years or older, and we were totally open to that. And after she listened to our story, she very much said, you need to go through the foster program. And she gave us all the numbers and resources and where to go to start our classes, to go through that 10-week course for what they call MAP training. And kind of basically said that for two older gay men, you're probably your best bet for time-wise and financially is to go through the fostering program, because it'll be the fastest way for you to get your child in a home or in your home with the least amount of expense to you. Just the fact that we live in the Midwest, private adoption can be very expensive, and there's not a lot of mothers who are pregnant who are looking for gay men to give their child to. So she said that she could provide us with all those resources, but she said that was probably our best bet. And we agreed, since we had looked into doing foster care before. We thought, okay, we'll actually really do it and make the right connections and get started, and we did. It was halfway through our courses that I got an email back from that individual to let me know that she came across a mother who was looking to give her child to two gay men. And our adoption process is completely unique. It should not be anyone's expectation. It wasn't our expectation. The entire time that we were going through this process, we kept thinking, okay, this isn't how it's supposed to work. Somebody pinched me, I'm dreaming. You're always thinking that the bottom at some point is going to fall out, because you just know that this is not most people's adoption story or their process. But anyway, so she knew a mother that was looking to give her baby away to two gay men. She's very open-minded. She also wanted to have an open adoption where she would always be, seen as the mother. Obviously we would be raising the child, and she would know us as Papa and Dada, or Papa and Daddy. And, we would, she'd be involved from a distance. It is an open adoption. She has sisters, and we didn't want her to not have those connections. So she wanted that because she would always be seen as the mother, and she wanted to give her baby away to a family that couldn't have their own biological children. And so I got that email, and I thought, okay, this is way too good to be true. I reconnected with her, with the contact at Foster Adopt Connect, and I basically told her, I said, look, we'll go ahead and have a conversation with her, because obviously we're very interested, but you told us to do the fostering, and we've already started our classes, so we're not going to discontinue that. And she absolutely agreed. She said, no, just have a conversation with this mother. I don't know anything more about her other than the fact that she's looking for someone to give her baby to, and I told her that I knew of a gay couple. So I'm just connecting you two as facilitating that process. After that, it's all in your hands. And I said, well, a conversation's not going to hurt anybody. So we did. We met with the birth mother, and we met with her best friend over lunch, and we just kind of told our story about how we met, how long we've been together, what our aspirations were and so forth. And she kind of talked through us what her situations has been, what her family history was, what has led to this decision for her to give her child away for adoption, and kind of what her expectations were from an open adoption standpoint, and just kind of feeling like if we felt like it was worth having additional conversations. And we left that lunch feeling very good about her state of mind and her reasonings for doing what she was doing. So it felt good enough for us to continue the conversations. And the next step we had was actually having the mother come out for a barbecue, where we got to meet the daughters, Elaine's 3 sisters, and we got to meet her mother and her brother. And we just kind of invited some people from our cul-de-sac to a barbecue, because we wanted to show the mother, what our family dynamic was, where the baby would be living, what our home was like, what the neighborhood was like, just to let them know that we have some great resources, we have great connections and friends, and this is a very loving home. So we did that, and we started going to the doctor's appointments, and at some point she basically just said, I'm going to give this baby to you guys. And it still felt very unreal. You don't expect someone, it just felt like it fell out of the sky. My partner says it was meant to be. This was God telling us that this is the child that we were supposed to have. Although on the inside we were still very nervous. So many months go by. We actually got our foster license. The idea in the back of my head has always been, okay, if this does not work out, I don't want to have to start all over at square one and start taking adoption or foster classes if this adoption doesn't go through. So we got our license, and we continued to go to the doctor's appointments, and of course we have an attorney who's handling the private adoption, and the mother had the baby, and we were there. We weren't there in the delivery room, but we were at the hospital, and we went in shortly after Elaine was born. And again, we were surrounded by her family, and so a couple of members of our family were there and got to meet Elaine. It was very surreal and very nerve-wracking. This whole entire process was nerve-wracking, all these months that go by. And what I would tell people is, so a couple things I've learned through the adoption process, knowing that ours is completely unique, and most people probably won't take anything away from it because it won't look like their process. But one of the things is, when you're starting to tell people, like when it first started happening, we didn't want to tell anybody because it just didn't feel real to us. So we kind of waited a month or two before we started telling family and then extended friends. Outside of some of our neighbors, obviously, when they met the birth mother, they were in on it, but we didn't want anything on social media. We didn't want to make a big fuss about it because we just wanted to make sure this was really real and it was going to happen. At least we felt more secure about it. And finally, we started telling people. And one of the things I would say is, if you're talking to someone who's going through an adoption process, you have a lot of questions. And most people have never met someone who's adopted someone, or never had friends that was an adoptee. So this is a new experience for you. It's a new experience for us as parents. And so there's a lot of not knowing what to say or what questions to ask. So I will just tell you that there are a lot of really good intentions, a lot of people who are well-intended who will ask just some really morbid questions, in my opinion. So if you talk to a friend or somebody who's saying that they're going through the adoption process, don't say things like, so have you thought about what will happen if the mother decides not to give you the baby? How long is it? I mean, how long can the mom change her mind? Because those questions are in the back of our minds. I mean, we're thinking them all the time. And that's a legitimate question for the most part, but it can be very daunting that everyone that you meet, that's one of the questions that they have, because you have to relive that thought in your mind over and over again. So what I would say is that if you are curious about someone's adoption process, a better question would be, so tell me, what is your adoption process? What is it like? What do you have to do in order to adopt this child? Trust me, we're going to fill in a lot of the blanks for you, but don't go in for the jugular and say, Oh, you're adopting? Well, how sure are you that the mother's not going to change her mind in the end? Or what will you do if she changes her mind? Don't lead with those questions. That is not helpful for anyone. But anyway, you're going to get them if you're going through an adoption process. Be patient with people. Maybe answer them sarcastically. Maybe hint that that's not a very nice question to ask. I don't know. Whatever you're comfortable with. But just know that you're going to get those questions. So be prepared to have to answer them. And a lot of them are going to come from people that you love. But anyway, so I digress. Try to think of here. So we went through. So we actually have officially adopted our daughter, and we're a month into this process. I'll talk a little bit about open adoption, because I mean there's closed adoptions and open adoptions, but kind of how ours is working is we stayed in communication, of course, with the mother and her family the whole time. We're on their social media, they're on our social media, so they see our pictures of Elaine that we post on Facebook and so forth, and Instagram or whatever. And we just kind of made sure that we stayed in open communications of what our expectations were, like once the child was ours. Like, we're going to be doing occasional family gatherings that make sense, like Mother's Day, a barbecue, her birthday, around Christmas, and so forth. So, but very much that she's our child, and we just want her to know that where she comes from, and that she has sisters, and she has some kind of connection with them in that process. And so in addition to us having people ask all these really weird questions, one of the things that we did is, just as much as the mother was involving us in this process, we involved her in the process. So she was at our baby shower. We had some friends that were like, the mother is coming to the baby shower? Like, is that really a good idea? Again, very insensitive question. We are two grown men. We have thoughts and ideas, and we make the decision that we want the birth mother at the baby shower. Trust me, your input is not necessary. But anyway, so you'll get those type of questions. You'll get questions of all the time second guessing your decisions, and you'll get a lot of people telling you what their opinions are about parenting, and you will not ask them for their advice, but they'll give it to you anyway. So just prepare yourself for that. So anyway, the birth mother was at the baby shower, and it was great. She got to meet my extended family. She got to meet like all of our friends. I mean, I wrote over 100 thank you cards. I don't think there was 100 people there, but we kept getting stuff through Amazon and through Target, and things from people I haven't seen in years that were just like, oh my God, you're having a baby. Here's something from Target. And I'm like, oh my gosh, another thank you card I have to write. So it was overwhelming, but it was very exciting. So I just kind of wanted to share that if you're going to do an open adoption, make sure you have a clear line of communication, of course, with the parties that are involved. Set clear expectations of what you expect things to look like, 3 months out, 6 months out, a year, 5 years, and so forth. I mean, you don't obviously want to put a lot of detail and write all these things out, but you just want to have those conversations. What else can I tell you about? So one thing, if you're going through this process, or if you know people that are going through the process, trust me, they have had many adoption scares. We had a nurse that came into our room, which is great, because when the baby was born, the hospital gave us a room right next door, and it was gratis. So that was amazing. We did not have that expectation. So, one of the nurses came into our room and was talking to us and was so excited that we had a baby girl, and she knew that we were adopting. I'm sure we were the talk of the nurses station. But one of the things that she asked was, she's like, well, how many adoptions, scares have you had? Or, how many have you been through? Something of that extent. And I'm a little groggy at this point because I'm sleep deprived. Adrenaline is pumping. And so anyway, I don't know the exact question, but it basically kind of probed us, is like, okay, how many roads did you go down in order to get here? And she was very surprised when we said it was the first biological mother that we met, and that it was a private adoption, and, kind of how we didn't have to go through an agency, and there wasn't a great financial expense and all this kind of stuff. So she was very excited for us, but she was very surprised. And so even knowing that we had what I would probably describe one of the best and smoothest adoptions that you could possibly want, we still had our scares. I mean, I remember there was a time where our attorneys had reached out to us, and they were talking about an additional legal step that we're going to have to go through. And they kind of made the mistake of just like asking a question like, is it this, da 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 da? And we're like, okay, well, we know the answer, but what does it mean if we answer that? Like, there's no context of why you're asking that question. And when we give you this information, there's not a response to what that means. And I mean, we went to bed that night thinking, oh my gosh, this is all blown up. We're less than a month away from Elaine being born, which and I didn't talk about this, but we got to pick the baby's name. So the birth mother was great. But so the attorneys kind of just left us hanging, and we're like, okay, what does this mean? What is this additional legal process? What does this question and our answer mean? And kind of just, we didn't really even say it to ourselves like out loud. We just kind of looked at each other like, well, I guess we'll just respond and send it back this email. And we went to bed. I know we both went to bed that night thinking, oh my God, this is all going to blow up. We're a month out from Elaine being born, and what's going to happen if this doesn't happen? This doesn't go through. I mean, we've had the baby shower. The nursery is prepared, stocked. We've had a friend who recently had a baby come over and walk it through and give us tips and tricks and all this kind of stuff. So we were like, we're ready. We're heavily nested. This baby needs to come home. And it wasn't even that, in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't that big of a deal. We just didn't know why they were asking us that question and why they needed this information. And so, like, I think it was 48 hours later, they finally got back to us and like, actually, we were wrong. We don't have to worry about that. This is what this means. And I think we just looked at each other and cried when we read that email. Like, I got the email and I said, Eric, read your email, because I just couldn't even talk. And he read it and he just looked at me and just cried. And we hadn't even said each other at that point, but we were both thinking it that whole 24, 48 hours, whatever it was. And I mean, we're just sitting there bawling, and it's, in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't that big of a deal, but you just learn, even though this process was very smooth, at those moments, you discover just how much stress that's on your shoulders, and, the weight, you can feel it. And so I just know that, continue to work through things, communicate with your family, communicate with your loved ones, friends, and of course, keep in communication with your partner throughout this process. Make sure you're both the rock that you can lean on at times when you need it. But there's going to be times where you're just bawling, and it might not even be a big deal, but you're bawling anyway. So that's a little bit of our story. Like I said, in these following videos, I'm going to try to keep them a lot shorter. But what I want to kind of go through is just things that I'm learning. So that might be favorite products that I have, what I bought from my nursery and what I'm actually using, and what I would not buy if I knew what I know now, what I'm doing, some parenting tricks, whether that just be keeping my sanity, keeping some kind of routine throughout the day. So I'm going to try to think of what other videos that I can put out there that'll be helpful for you. But I don't know who will watch this video, if you'll find it helpful, if you'll find our story helpful. But what I will tell you is that if you are in the Kansas City metro area or not, your money is good anywhere. Whether it be foster, adopt, connect, or someone like that, or an agency like that within your area, if you have the financial means, donate your time, donate to a food bank, a clothing bank that supports adoptive or foster families, or connect with foster, adopt, connect, and send them money, because they're doing great work. And we really would not be in the position that we are in now with our beautiful baby daughter if it just wasn't for the great people there. Particularly, I don't want to necessarily blast her name out there, but she knows who she is if she's watching this video. But I mean, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for their encouragement, their support, their guidance, and they came to our adoption hearing. That's just how supportive they are. So they're amazing people. And I'll send a link on how you can connect with them, whether that be for utilizing their resources or donating to their program. But thank you so much. I apologize for all the rambling. I hope my story was helpful. You can post any questions or comments that you'd like. I'll try to get back to them as quickly as possible. I'll try to generate some content based on your questions maybe going forward. And hopefully you'll find these all helpful. And have a great day, guys. Bye.